Thank you guys for all being patient. Welcome to our first workshop of the semester, um, Introduction to Python and PyGame. So the way we're going to do today is to introduce you guys to the importance of Python, how to start off in coding Python. Should be familiar to some of you guys that do Java or other languages, or for any of you guys that are just getting into programming, it will be pretty comprehensive for you as well. And then we'll be heading into how you can make a video game using Python very simply, to have any image you want and control it using your keyboard to move anywhere on the screen. So that's what our agenda is going to be for today. So first, I just want to say to everybody, in case this isn't clear, just to reiterate one more time, if any of you guys aren't in our Discord or aren't in our emailing list, at the end we will be going over all of the QR codes and everything. We'll be sharing that. That way you guys can join us there. Discord is the best way to reach us and the best way to get announcements. So is Instagram and everything. So we'll be sharing all those platforms, as well as some of you guys might have not seen, but we shared our meeting from last week. So if you want to check that out, all the meetings will be on the SATA YouTube channel. So I'd recommend subscribing or just checking in or checking on Discord or your emails for all the recordings, just like today's recording will be available for everyone that's not here. Okay, so I guess first, before we start on actually coding in Python, I want to stress the importance of how you're able to use this, whether you're in computer science or whether you're in cybersecurity. So starting off from a computer science point of view, Python is so popular right now as a language because it was one of the first languages designed with the intent of being very easy to learn and very easy to code with. The whole popularity of Python revolves around that anything that you would be able to build, any programs that you'd be able to build, are built very quickly and deployed very quickly in quick time. There are the drawbacks to Python, which I could talk about if we have any time at the end, or if you guys have any questions about why not to use Python or when to use Python, we can go into that. But you should know it is incredibly easy to learn, incredibly easy to do, and you can make some really powerful applications in such a small amount of time compared to other popular programming languages like Java or C or even R, right? So that is why we want to get into Python, as well as from a cyber point of view. I don't know if Derek is, I see Derek's in the chat right now. Derek actually works in the cybersecurity industry, and he uses Python every day, he says, in cybersecurity, whether it's to run a script to be able to analyze things or just to go over large amounts of data. There are so many applications for cybersecurity to be able to learn and use Python. Derek, are you here right now? Do you want to speak about this for a second? Okay. Well, there are a lot of applications that you can use this for, and it is actually one of the most popular programming languages to use in creating scripts, other than obviously Bash when you're working directly with the things, to be able to use the cybersecurity. So with that out of the way, I want to start getting into the nitty-gritty of how we can actually use this. So there are a lot of different ways and a lot of different systems that you can install Python on, to be able to program in, right? Just like maybe you guys have used IntelliJ or Eclipse for Java. There are so many different ways that you can use Python. What we're going to be using today, to make it easier for everybody, is the site called Replit, right? So this site is a completely web-based engine. So if you want to head over to Replit, I just sent over a link right inside the chat. You can go ahead and click that link. You could sign in with your Google account and just have a free account made, or if you want to take a second to make an account, this is what I'm going to be programming in for today for Python and for the game. Super easy, no installation. It's just as simple as making an account. So I'll go ahead and I'll give everyone a couple minutes right here to either create an account or to log in with their Google account to be able to start. The link is in the chat. And obviously for anyone that's not comfortable coding alongside me, I'll go ahead and actually be sharing all the code that I do today. with you guys on Discord and probably in a Git repository. That way you can just download it, and that'll be in a follow-up email to you guys. So if you're not comfortable sticking with us, you can watch the recording back again, follow that way, or I would recommend trying to code alongside us. All right. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen to show you guys how this works. All right. So when you first, everyone can see my screen right now? Eyes? Okay, great. So first off, you'll be greeted kind of with this like introduction thing, what languages you're interested. That's not really important. There are a lot of different things and languages you can actually use this web engine for. It's my favorite one if you're working on the fly and you don't feel like installing a bunch of things. It has a bunch of libraries built in. So very simple. The way it works is every time you make a REPL, it's like a new project for Python or for whatever programming languages. So I'll go up to this button over here and I'll press New REPL. And the first thing we're greeted with is what language we want to program in. Obviously, we're going to choose Python. And now you get to name your REPL. So I'm just going to name mine Intro to Python. And then it's as simple as pressing Create REPL. All right. So after you've gone ahead and created your REPL, you'll be greeted kind of with this screen. It's three parts. So on the left over here where my mouse is, this is the files area. So this is where you're able to add new files, where you're able to maintain files. You can go ahead and press this and upload files or upload folders or even download all your files from here. That way you can use it for any Python project or programming project you want to use it for. This main.py file is the one we're going to be focusing on today, but of course if you get more advanced with Python, you can go ahead and add other files. I'm going to go ahead and now drag this to the left since we don't really need any other files for our intro. Now, this area over here, main.py and then the lines, this is where we're actually able to type in all of our code, right? So we could type in all of our code. So I'll give us off as probably the most simple statement you guys have all seen, a print statement in Python. We just go ahead and write print and use our parentheses. And now inside of here, I can use quotation marks, either single or double, and write any type of phrase. So, welcome to the first workshop. Once I've ran that code, I can go ahead and press run. And you'll see here on our right side of the screen, this is actually where our console is. So anything that we want to see the output for our program will be in this blue area on the right. It's also where you'll see that you'll get errors. So if I just purposefully add an error, it will give us a comprehensive rundown of how our error is working, what error we threw, and exactly what lines. This is line 1. I have line 1 over here, so I can come and erase this, and we're all good again. Okay. So what I want to start with is I'm going to be going over a brief introduction showing you guys the tools that we're going to need in this programming language to make our game work, right? So the first thing we're going to have to start off with, which although it seems a little bit boring, it's great to have a good understanding of this, is variables, right? So Python works a little bit differently than other programming languages that you might have used. In Java, when you want to make something like a string, which would be any type of sentence, right? You would have to write string and your variable name, so my string, and then set it equal to something. In Python, it's as simple as just setting up a variable name and setting it equal to whatever value you want. So why don't I set a variable called name equal to, and using my quotation marks, I'll use my name, Vince. Python is great in the fact that it can automatically recognize what type of data it's going to be stored in the variable. It's a big reason it's popular is that you can just set your data equal to it and it'll understand. So I'm going to set my name equal to Vince, and I'll set my age equal to 20. And what I'm going to do is just combine these into a print statement. So I'll write print my name is, I use a plus sign, I'll put name as my variable, another plus sign, and I am age years old. Okay, so let me just, okay, years old. If I run this, we're just going to run into one error, which is because age is not a string. So all we have to do is just turn age to a string by using str. It might seem a bit redundant or complicated to you, but it's as simple as a print statement needs an entire string. So there's a lot of ways we can accomplish that. The easiest way would just be to turn our age variable, which is a number, an integer, into a string by straight up turning it into a string. So if we run this again, my name is Vince, and I am 20 years old. I'll give everyone a minute to try that example out. And you guys could, of course, please feel free to type in the chat. We have people monitoring the chat to be able to ask any questions, or if you guys are stuck on anything. So feel free to ask any of your questions inside of the chat, or if anything's going good for you. Use single. Do we use single or double quotes? Justin asked. Justin, it does not matter in Python. So if I said Vince instead for double quotes, I can go ahead and it's the same result. The only reason you would use double quotes is because you can use apostrophes in your string if you needed to do that. So it does not matter. All right. Now, the next thing I want to show you guys is how we can actually add any values to our data. So what I'm going to do is I want to turn my age, right, to 21. So say I had like a birthday and I just wanted to change it to 21. What I'm going to do is just say age is equal to age plus 1. And if I print out age again, you'll see I get 21. To accomplish the same thing in less code, we can try out saying age plus equals 1. This is the exact same code as the line above that I just wrote. It's just a shorthand way of writing it that's very popular in programming languages that you guys might have seen. And if this is all very old to you guys, just bear with me. We will get to more of the interesting stuff. Does Python not use int or double like Java? They do. So they use ints and doubles, but the way that it works, I'll reiterate one more time, is that variables they automatically are recognized to what variable type they are based on what they're set equal to. So in other words, instead of having to say that int age so that it knows that it's an integer, since we set it equal to an integer, it already knows that age is an integer. It's called duck typing. All right. So the next big thing that I want to get into with you guys, right? And obviously, if you'd like to try out any other arithmetic using this, you could try to multiply, right? And you'll accomplish other effects like that, or even divide using a slash. I would recommend trying out any of those techniques. All right. So the next thing that I want to try out is an if statement, right? So what is an if statement? For those of you guys that don't know, or those of you guys that want more of a comprehensive thing, an if statement, another word for it is a conditional, right? So in this world, if there's a condition that we have to abide by, it means that that condition must be met in order for something to happen. So let's say that I'm trying to get into a concert, but I have to be 21 years old, right? Okay. So I'll set my new age equal to 21. What we can do is start off in Python by just writing if. There's no parentheses or anything like that. There are no parentheses or anything like that. We could just say if new age is equal to 21, print you are allowed to go to the concert. And as you guys might expect, since I set my new age to 21, it will print out you are allowed to go to the concert. One of the caveats about Python that you guys might notice is that in Java, if we want to go into if statements or anything, we use brackets, right? In Python, what you do is you put a colon and you use indentation. So you can see, if I press tab one time, it indents me inside of the if statement. And I could just come right out of that if statement and continue with the rest of my code. Faizan, would you like to maybe go into else if and else statements?
Yeah, sure. So,
Do
instead,
you want to share your screen? I can stop sharing my screen.
I think it's easier if you just continue and I can, I guess, talk about it.
Sounds good.
So, the way Python runs is, I mean, it's pretty much the same as Java. So since the new age is 21 in this case, the compiler goes to the print line. But let's say if new age was 22, if you had an elif statement there that says if elif new age equals 22, then it will go into that print statement. So instead of else if, it's just elif.
Yeah, so kind of like what Faizan was saying, else if works in the way of elif is the same as saying else if in other programming languages. It's just how Python decided to write it. So if this first statement fails, because we set our new age to 22, so it's not equal to 21, but we have a statement right here that says else if the new age is equal to 22, it'll then print out you're too old to be here. So if I run that, you are too old to be here. It's a way to make it so that if one if statement fails, you can have another if statement after it. And we can continue this as long as we would like, if new age is equal to 23, etc., etc. So the last thing about if statements that you guys should know is that you can end a whole entire if statement block. So let's say that they're not 21, they're not 22. Well, what's going to happen? So why don't I set the age equal to 10? My name is Vince and I am 20 years old. Right? It does not print out you are allowed to go to the concert, and it does not print out you were too old to be here. So how can we design our code so that if they're type something above 21 or they type something below 21, we can accommodate for that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my else if right over here. And I'm going to say else if the new age is greater than 21, say you're too old to be here. All right, so why don't I say my age is 23? If I run that, you're too old to be here. But what if I said my age is 10? Right? Our little cousin tries to come to the concert with us. Nothing's going to print out. So what we can do is we can end everything in a couple different ways, but a popular way to catch everything is just to say else. Else print you are too young. Go home. If they're not 21, if they're not older than 21, this will account for every other option. So it'll say you're too young. So now if we run it, you are too young, go home. If statements get more complicated than that, and obviously you can use it for strings, right, to compare if strings are equal to each other, or even if things are true and false. But just for the sake of what we're going to be doing today, we're just going to be focusing on very simple if statements so that we can make way to be able to do our game. Okay? So I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second, and I'm just going to ask everybody inside of the Zoom call if you can go ahead and go to participants in the bottom right, and right next to your name, just go ahead and raise your hand if you feel comfortable in everything that I said, and if not, right, you can ask a question right now before we move on to our next big thing. Okay, awesome. All right. So I don't see any questions popping up in the chat. And I see a lot of hands going up, so I think I am good to move on. So, the very last thing that we're going to be going over for our code is how to do loops, right? So again, I'm going to be showing you just the basics, and if you want any more supplement material after, you can ask me and I can provide you with some of the things that I've used. Even Derek posted in the chat some of the things he's used for Python, whether it's cybersecurity or computer science, that can aid you in progressing a little further. All right, so when we run an if statement, one of these has to be true in order for the print statement to happen underneath it. It's pretty simple. Well, what if we want something to keep repeating over and over and over again while it's true? Well, that is what's called a loop in programming. And I'll show you guys how to do a basic loop inside of Python, like so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a new variable over here, and I'm going to say hungry. And I'm going to set hungry equal to true, because I am starving right now. What I'll do is, underneath hungry, I'll say, while hungry is true. We can also write this as while hungry, and I'll write all the different ways we could say, while hungry is true, while hungry equals, double equals means that they're the same, single equals means we're setting something equal to something, while hungry equals true, or you could just say while hungry. These are all the same ways of writing this exact same while loop. What I'll go ahead and say now is while I'm hungry, right? Print, get me my food, right? And if I run the code, it's just going to non-stop say that get me my food, right? So I'm going to stop this before I cause any issues in their database. And I have to figure out, how can I stop this while loop? Well, what makes this while loop run? We're saying while hungry is equal to true, right? So let me just pull up the chat just in case. Okay. We're saying while hungry is equal to true. Well, as soon as hungry is false, it'll stop this loop. So why don't I go ahead and say, every time I'm yelling, why don't I say yells is equal to 0. I haven't started yelling yet. Every time I yell out, I'll add 1 to yells. And at the very end, all I'm going to do is say if yells is equal to 10, set hungry equal to false. If I've yelled at 10 times, I know I'm not getting any food from anybody. I might as well give up from yelling. So now if I run this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We yelled out 10 times. We set hungry to false. Hungry is not true anymore, so the loop ends. That's the basics to loops. They will run code over and over again while this is true. And it could be any condition that you have. All right. So, without any further ado, and I hope I'm not going too fast for some of you guys, what we're going to do now is start getting into how we can actually code our game. So, the first thing I'm going to want to do is start up a new project. So I'm going to click these little hamburger, this 3 lines at the top, and I'm going to press new REPL. And of course, if you guys ever want to get to your other projects, you can go to my REPLs. I'm going to press new REPL. But instead of pressing Python as a language, I'm going to go ahead and say PyGame. It's still the Python language, but we have to change how the website works a little bit so that it can actually process graphics for you guys. And I'll name it First Game. All right. All right. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys about, just in case you forgot, is what our ultimate goal is with this game, is to figure out how we can load up an image and how we can move that image with our arrow keys, either WASD or our arrow keys on our keyboard. That way it can move around the screen in our background that we set. So the first thing you guys might want to know is that we're going to have some sort of image to move around, right? And we want it to be kind of a small image. So right now, before I go into actually coding up this game, I'm going to say to have an image ready. So I'll give you guys two options. I will be providing an image for all of you guys that you can download, or you can go ahead and try to get a small image. I'd recommend, if I were you, to get an image that is, let me see the exact details of it. I'd recommend getting an image that's about nothing more than 50 by 50 pixels. So 32 by 32 works, 50 by 50 works. I'll be sharing an image that is 50 by 50 pixels. So if you want to access this image, at the top of WebEx, there's a tab that says File. You can click on File and then click on Transfer. So I'm going to be sharing the file right now to all you guys. It's called smiley.png. This is something that me and my kids actually made up when I was teaching over the summer for my camp. It's a little funny. I enjoy it. Go ahead and click on smiley.png, and then you could download it. So this is the exact correct image proportions for what we're going to be working with if you're uncomfortable with getting your own image, or maybe you already have an image on your web computer that you can use. All right, so just go ahead and do me a favor and just raise your hand as the participants when you have downloaded this image if you have if you're actually working with us and doing this. That way I know when I can get started. All right, thank you guys. And again, that's at the bottom right, participants, and then right next to your name you have a little hands up. All right, cool. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. It will get fun in 1 second. All right, I'll give you guys another 20 seconds to do this. All right, so now I am going to get into how to actually do this.
So we have a question, Brian. Does it need to be on the desktop?
It does not need to be on the desktop. That's where I shared my file from and saving on the desktop. I'll show you, you're going to be uploading your image into REPL, so it doesn't matter where it is. It could be in your downloads folder, it could be in your desktop, it could be anywhere on your computer. I just keep it on my desktop because I know I'm going to probably throw it away after this. Okay. All right. So I will start sharing my screen right now. All right. You do not have to have a desktop app for this. No, it's just it should be a PNG image, so every Windows or Mac computer can load up. Even Linux can load up a PNG image without any app. All right. And I'll show you guys actually, I'll share a website at the end of where I designed this in and where you can design your own pixel art for the background image or anything that you'd like to do. All right. So the first thing we're going to want to do is actually upload this file into our REPL. So we got two options. We could either simply grab the file from a folder or from your desktop. Mine's right on the desktop, right? And you could just drag it right into the files like that. And you'll see now, smiley.png is inside of there. The other option we got is to click these three drop-down menu, this three dots, and press upload file. Then you can go over to your desktop or wherever you have it saved and go ahead and click on it. So mine is smiley.png, and I'll press open. And that's how you load it up. So you have two options, which is either to click these three dots and upload the file, or to just drag and drop it right into your files. So now we have the one file that we're going to need for this project. Oh, that you don't have any files to download on WebEx. Okay, I see, Brian. So, I am sharing. Yeah, or you know what you can do? I'll share it over right now to everybody inside of the chat. You can just go ahead and look up, there are images on Google that you could very easily just download a 50 by 50 pixel image just make sure the image proportion is 50 by 50. Just look for 50 by 50 pixel art or 32 by 32 pixel art, and you can do that. Or what you can do is just follow along with the code that we have, and at the end of the session, I could show you how to create your own that you could load up afterwards that will still work after. All right. So, first thing that we're going to have to do is I'm going to set you guys up with a little bit of the prerequisites for everything. So I will copy and paste right now. It's inside of the WebEx chat. These are the first lines that you're going to want to just copy and paste right into your main.py file. These are just some very simple things that we're setting up, and I will explain this in 1 second. But what I would recommend right now is to just go into the WebEx chat, copy everything that I pasted in there, and then just paste it inside this main.py. All right. So basically all this is right now is just setting up PyGame inside of Python. So what is PyGame? It's Python's own game library, right? So it's all this code that the Python devs have actually manufactured themselves that they let us just import right into a Python file. So at the very top, all I had to write was import PyGame. That's the library. And then this pygame.init, this starts the game, right? We're setting some variables for the display width and the display height. It's going to be 800 by 600, right? A way to think about the display width and display height is kind of like if you have a 1920 by 1080 monitor, it's just 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. So we're just setting up what we want the dimensions of this game to be. And then we just have a couple other options right here, right? So we're actually setting the mode of the display. So we're telling the PyGame how to actually load up this display. We could set a caption for this. So I'll write a caption of my smiley man game or anything that you'd like. And then the rest are variables that we're going to be working with. So just bear with me if it's a bit confusing. This is just easier to just share with you guys, and then we will actually get into the coding part. These are just some variables that we have to set up. All right, so let me see if I could share a whiteboard with you guys now. All right. So on WebEx right now, I'm just sharing you a whiteboard just so you can understand what's going to be happening. So as you might have noticed, the variables of display width and display height in the game are a value of 800 and 600. What we're basically telling it is that it's going to be 800 pixels by 600 pixels. So just like how cartoons work and just how TV works or any video games work, it works in pixel values, right? Just like how your screen might be 1920 by 1080 or 4K is even larger than that, right? We're going to be working with pixel values. So what's important to understand is that since we have a whole entire game of pixels on our screen, what we're going to be controlling is where to load up our little smiley guy and how to move him around the screen. So we have an entire screen of 800 by 600 pixels. And our job as programmers right now is to have our smiley guy and figure out where we can move him on the screen based on these values. So if we want to move him to the right, we're going to have to change his X. If we want to move him up, we're going to have to change his Y. And it the same works with left and right. This is Cartesian values in math, right? So it's just as simple as thinking of a whole entire grid of X and Y values and then we're just moving our character around that grid by just changing his X and Y. That's the basic idea of how we're going to be approaching this game, and really how a lot of animation approaches how to do video games. So let me just share my screen again. All right, so with that said, to be able to actually figure out how to move this guy around, what we're going to have to do is say X, and set a variable for X, and this I'll say X position, or I'll just say X position is going to be equal to, and doing some quick math, we can give this a good starting position for our X based on what we set our width and our height to for our screen. So I'll very simply say display width times 0.45, and I'll set my Y position equal to display width times 0.8. This is very simply saying that we are setting our X and Y positions for loading the image. That's all we're doing right now. To start off, all we're going to do is just focus on moving the character to the left and right, and I'm going to leave it to you guys as a challenge, and it's very simple, of how you can actually move him up and down. That would be something for you to try on your own. It follows the exact same setup of how we're going to be moving him left and right. All right, so what I'll do is I'll say X change, so this measures my X change, how much I'm going to change. Is it display height or width? Oh, let me see that chat message. Is it display height or width for the Y position? It's going to be display height. That's a good catch, Justin. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the X change. This variable controls how much to change the X position by. You can think about it almost like speed. So in fact, I'll set it equal to speed. And I'll set this value equal to 0. All right. So what we're going to do now is just do some prerequisites that PyGame requires us to start up the game, and then we'll actually get into how to control it and how to move our character around. So the first thing is, you might see over here that we have a variable called crashed, and we set it equal to false. A lot of you guys that have played video games before, even on websites, right, or having an app on your phone, if an app crashes, right, we kind of want to exit the whole entire program. We don't want it to crash and then the user have a bad experience with our app. So what I'll say is, I only want this game to run while crashed, while we have not crashed. Run the game while we haven't crashed. And this is as simple as realizing that we do not want our game to run and there to be any bad game running if we crash our game. If there's an error, we want to get out of here. All right. And now, all we have to do is just figure out how to move our character to the left and right. So PyGame offers something called PyGame offers something called events, right? So in video games, an event is something that happens. So if you're playing on PS4 and you're hitting the X button on your controller, or you're moving the thumbstick, or you're playing Valorant or CSGO on PC and you're hitting WASD or clicking left mouse, those are all events. That's how programmers see what you're doing. They call it an event. So PyGame actually measures all those events. So what we want to do is go through those events and figure out when certain ones happen, like if we press the left key or the right key, we want to move our character. So what I'll say is, for event in pygame.event.get. getting all the users playing input. That's what we're doing with this simple line, is getting all the users playing input. All right. We'll set up by saying if event dot type. So what type of event is it? If the event dot type is equal to PyGame dot key down, right? If they press the down key, so that would be your arrows on your keyboard. If they press the down key, what do we want to happen? Okay. Well, key down actually covers when you're pressing a key down. So say you're like holding a trigger on an Xbox remote, that key is down, it's being held down. The other option would be if event.type is equal to PyGame.key up, if they release the key. So all we're measuring is if they press the key, we want to do something underneath it. If they release the key, we want to do something underneath it. The only other things to figure out is what keys do we want to look for, right? So we want to move our character to start off to the left and the right of the screen, right? Okay. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and I'll say if event.key, if event.key is equal to PyGame.key left. If they press the left arrow key. And if you guys are getting confused, I highly recommend when I'm writing these hashtags and then the lines after, those are comments, right? So for anyone that's not familiar with comments in programming, none of these will run. This is just for me to make sure I'm understanding what I'm doing. So I'd recommend, if you're getting a little lost, if you're not asking questions inside of the chat, to read my comments to make sure that you understand what's happening. All that we're doing right now is basically setting it up so that what are we going to do if they press a key? What are we going to do based on that key that they pressed? So, if they press the key left, right? Some of you guys, I'll give you a second to think of maybe how you'd want to do this, but what would we want to do if they press the key left? Well, just like I mentioned earlier, right? We're going to be controlling this image based on their pixel values. We have a whole entire canvas, a whole screen of pixel values, X's and Y's that we could load up our image at. So I have a speed over here that controls how much to change the X position by. So if I press the key to the left, right, we're actually going to want to subtract 5 from the speed. We want to shake the speed and make it -5. If you want the character to go faster, it's as simple as making a train by subtracting 10 from the speed, or 20, or 30. I'd recommend sticking to 5 or 10, right? That way we can start off small and then measure it like that. All right. If event.key is equal to PyGame.key right, we don't want to subtract from the speed. We want to add to the speed. Because the idea is, when you have positive x's, it's going to move to the right. When you have negative x's, it's going to move to the left. That's just how images work and how all of computers work with pixels. The lower value you go, the more left it is. The higher value you go, the more right it is. And the same when it works with y, right? The higher you go would be higher on the screen. The lower you go, the lower on the screen. All right. Now, we've kind of finished all of the different ways that you could push the key down. If they push a key down, I'm measuring for the right and the left. What I'll say to you guys, right? Excuse me, I'm going to change this to an else if. So notice how I changed this to, notice the change to else if. We covered all the different keys for the key downs if they press a key down. If you're interested in making the character be able to go up and down too, you're probably going to have to add different keys that they could press from the events. All right. So just bear with me, guys. We'll be able to see our result in one moment here. Okay. So now we'll go to the key up. And this one is going to be just one if statement to say if they released a key. What key did they release? So I'll say if event dot key is equal to PyGame dot key left, or event dot key is equal to PyGame dot key right. If they released the left key, or they released the right key, because we want to account for if they released either key, I'm just going to set my speed equal to 0. I want to stop moving, just like a car. If you let go of the gas, you want to stop moving. That's exactly what we're doing right here. And I'll send out my code snippet to all of you guys at the end in case anything is not working for you guys or in case you weren't following along for the whole thing. All right. So just a couple more lines of code and we will be able to have this all running. So I just want to be able to show you guys. Every time we go inside of this for statement, or we go inside of an if, there's like a little line that gets generated to show you everything that's inside of it, right? So everything that's inside of this if statement, if you look at my mouse cursor, everything that's inside of this while loop is here. What we want to make sure is that we're on the line that's still inside the while loop, but outside this for loop. So I'm going to be right here. A good way to do this is if you come after this speed variable and you press enter, just keep pressing backspace until you're all the way out, and then press tab one time. And now, all of this logic that we just did to measure all the different types of events, if we put down a key, what key we pressed, it all revolved really about changing the speed variable and how much of a speed we have. So what I want to do now is tie that back into my X position, because the X position is where our image is getting loaded in. So all I'll do is I'll say X position plus equals speed, which is the same thing as saying X position is equal to X position plus speed. All right, now just 5 more lines of code and we actually get to see everything come to life. So what I'll do is I'll write a piece of code to say, all right, game display dot fill, and this is going to set our background. So this sets our background color. It sets it based on RGB. What I'm going to do is I actually gave you guys black and white were 2 options for the backgrounds that are up here. Black is 000 on RGB, white is 255, 255, 255. If you have questions on how RGB works, right, you can ask afterwards. But what I'll do is, since I already set black and white, go ahead. Do you want your background to be black or do you want your background to be white? I'll pass in white, just because I think it'll make my character pop. Now, the one part of code that we've been missing that some of you guys might have noticed is, sure, we've been messing around with the speed, we've been messing around with everything, but we have never focused on the image. Isn't the whole point of this to move the image? Well, you're 100% right. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to come right over here, right underneath this clock variable, all the way at the top. So if you saw, I just scrolled all the way at the top, and I'm just going to load up my image. So I'm going to say image is equal to pygame.image.load, and just load up the name of the image we have right here. You might note that I use quotation marks. It needs a string, so make sure you use double or single quotation marks. My image is called smiley.png. Smiley.png. So we just load the image. So to recap, all we're doing is figuring out ways that based on what key you press to change the speed. And now we've just loaded up the image. So now let's tie everything that we just did into itself. That way we can actually get this working. All right. So I'm going to say now, game display dot blit. What blit does is it will paint the image on the screen. So inside of blit, we have to give it two things. I'm going to give it my image. I'm going to give it, in parentheses, my X position, comma, Y position. Why it takes this is it's going to paint the image. We pass in the image we loaded up. That way it knows what image to pass in. And we pass in our X and Y. That way it knows where to load that image up. That's the whole idea, right? Is we have an image loaded up. Now, controlling the speed, we can change where this whole thing is loaded. So we say game display.blit. I have to tell PyGame to update their display. So update the display. This should be fairly simple based on all the functions I'm calling. And I'll say clock.tick. You might have noticed we set a clock up here equal to the PyGame clock. This actually controls your frames per second. So if you have a 144 Hz monitor, you can go ahead and set this to 144 FPS and you'll see your game will run at 144 FPS. What I'm going to do is just tell it to run at 60 FPS because that's more than enough for me. But we set up our FPS. How quickly we want the character to move. So I'll set up to 60 FPS. Actually, I should do 30 since WebEx only lets us share in 30. All right. I'll press backspace so that we're outside of this while loop, and then just one last piece of code, which is telling PyGame to quit, and then telling the whole program to quit. So we set up our FPS using clock.tick. I come outside of that by pressing backspace, and I just quit everything. If I run, it might take a second to load everything up, but it should run right over here on the side. Once we let all this come up and start up. All right, give it a second. And there we go. There's my character, loaded up on the screen with a white background. So if I click inside of here, well, we said key right, key left. Why don't I try this out? I'll hold my right key, set it to the right. I let go, it turns the speed to 0, and I'm not moving. I'll hold it to the left. It's moving to the left, and it's as simple as that. And when you want to stop your program, just go ahead and press stop. And that is fully how to complete all the code for your first PyGame. So what I'd recommend to you guys is, this is just to give you a taste into one of the things that Python can do, and a fun little interactive example for you guys to be able to, get introduced to some of these things. But really, all we're doing here, guys, is setting variables equal to something, and then using this PyGame library, like you might use a lot of different libraries, like web scraping inside of cybersecurity, to be able to do something. So what I highly recommend to you guys as a challenge, that way you can actually know you're understanding how to do all these different things, is try to make it so that if you press the up key or the down key, you can make them go up and down using the Y position, right? That would be a challenge for you to try on yourself. So I know I might have gone a little quick. It's just a little difficult without people talking for me to gauge how well you guys are doing. I will be sharing all the code for this after, and it'll be included on our next email, as well as a recording of this.
To kind of
I'm
wrap
sure
it
you can
all up,
obviously go at your own pace to
next
see how I
week
did
we are
everything.
going to be having another live demo for you guys. We're going to be showing you guys one of the most effective, I guess, kind of ways of getting someone's credentials or getting into someone's account. Hypothetically, if you could get into someone's social media account, this would be the way. We're not saying we're going to teach you guys how to do that, but it is definitely something that could be utilized in that way. So we are going to be doing a demo on phishing. So we do encourage everyone to join same time next week for that live demo.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Isaac. I'm looking forward to next week, as well as I just want to say, if you don't mind, stop sharing Faizan. I want to say big thanks to Faizan, Nicole, Isaac, Roshni. You guys have great experience, and thank you guys for just sharing all of the material with everyone. It's incredibly important, guys. So just like Isaac said, stay tuned in next week for some hypothetical fun. And I just want to end this with a big thank you to everybody. I would highly recommend you could stay after and ask us questions. But just to wrap it up, me and Jill are going to take a second. I'll share my screen, Jill, to just go over just 2 events that are coming up that you might want to make sure that you can be there for, or that you might be interested in. So I'm just going to share my screen right now, and this would be the first event. Jill, if you want to just talk for a second about it, and then I'll go over the next event with everybody. And these will all be supplied to you inside of Discord and in our next email to everyone. So go ahead, Jill.
Yeah, sure. Hey guys, I'm Jill again, and we just wanted to pass on an event to you from Dr. DeBello. She told us about a Women in Tech event, and it's in partnership with the company that Roshni and Nicole mentioned, Productivity, I believe, and it's a global consulting firm. And the event is on September 21st, 2020, and if you're interested, please reach out. We'll have it posted, and I think it's going to be 150 to 325. Yes, and I believe that's a Monday.
Yeah, it's Common Hour, and it's going to be Eastern Standard Time, so same Common Hour for St. John's, no matter what state you guys are in. Awesome. And the only other thing I'm going to show you guys is this one is kind of late, short notice, but if you want to be there, this is the Women in Science program, and this will be shared immediately in Discord. What does a scientist look like? It goes over a bunch of panelists in different fields, as you can see down here, and it's going to be tomorrow. Right, so the 11th at 2 p.m. You could sign up a registration. I'm sure there is definitely no limit on this, so I would recommend any of the women that are interested in any STEM fields. I would say that you should probably attend this event. It is something to look forward to, and again, there's something provided us by Dr. DeBello. So to wrap it up, one last time, thank you so much for joining us, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to stay after. Any general questions are, if you were confused, a certain thing in Python that you might want to know, any resources, any further questions on anything that we went over in the marketing and internship presentation, that is it. And as well as, before you leave, if you could just do us the favor, if you have not already signed in, Isaac put it up, again, the Google document. It's important that you sign in, not only so we know that you're here, but also that we know that you're comfortable being filmed during this whole entire thing, even though a lot of you guys don't speak or have your camera on. So thank you guys so much. That ends our Common Hour, and that's it. Thank you guys. Thanks everyone on the board that presented, and we will see you guys later. We'll be announcing everything. Stay tuned.